This conference will now be recorded.
I've been rolling. Smart stuff. He turned it into a monster by itself.
Oh, it is gigantic.
Man, it looks like it evolves every year to something bigger. That monster keep growing.
Jim and I were just talking about it. There's nothing that isn't touched by it, and now there's nothing that isn't input by it. All the data that you build up, and
It's going out of hand.
we're screening and then we're scoring.
It's going out of hand. And then the time frame is growing and wanting more information.
Well, it's just the amount of time like the boy demands and
Yeah.
stuff, just for their instruction. Keep a leash on us, you
It
know.
really is.
It's like, we need a district boy.
You really do.
But I didn't, you know what? That's the last thing in the world I wanted more.
You don't want more, man.
I love Chad, but I get tired of it. You really do, because it's always something that do, need. It's like, and I understand, but it's just,
It really is.
they forgot people. They forgot other things. They really don't like, yeah, TAC, things like that.
You really do. I mean, it's turning into a job that's almost gonna be like year round after a while.
Yeah, I guess it's job security, I would hope, because I always think we get fired. You don't do it. Can't win.
Yeah.
We're just waiting for one more person and we'll be getting started momentarily. Sonia and Ivan, can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Good morning, thanks.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ivan.
Hey, good morning, Jim. How are you doing?
Good, thank you for joining.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, well, good morning, everybody. We do have a forum. Welcome to this is an interagency consultation meeting to kick off a regional conformity assessment for the FAMPO 2050 LRTP and FY 21 to 24 TIP. In today's meeting, I'll provide an introduction and overview, mainly of the conformity requirements and why we're here and the purpose of this meeting. We'll go through the ICG membership to take a look at the current folks that we have as part of this committee and see if any updates are needed. And then there are a couple items that we will need to consult on as per the FAMPO ICG procedures. Then we'll go through public comments in case anybody from the public would like to speak. And lastly, we'll go through approvals and next steps. All right, well, many of you may recall that the Fredericksburg region was formerly a non-attainment area for it's what we call the 1997 8-hour ozone standard. When we refer to ozone standards, we typically refer to the year that they were promulgated, and there's really three of them that we talk about: the 1997 standard, the 2008 standard, and the most recent 2015 standard. So this region was formally in non-attainment with the 97 standard, and it did come back into compliance. And when that happened, this region was redesignated into attainment and adopted a maintenance plan. And then when EPA moved forward with the more stringent 2008 standard, they actually revoked the 1997 standard that this region was in maintenance with at that point. And when they revoked the 97 standard, the conformity requirements that were applicable to this region went away. And that happened in the 2015 timeframe. So from 2015 to around 2018, this region no longer had regional transportation conformity requirements. However, there was a court case, which we refer to as South Coast 2, that in 2018, they found that all areas which they call orphan areas, which were areas such as Fredericksburg, that was previously in non-attainment or maintenance with the 97 standard and meeting the 2008 standard, due to anti-backsliding concerns with the Clean Air Act requirements, the court ruled that these orphan areas needed to demonstrate transportation conformity again, even though there were no air quality issues in this region. And I would stress, this Fredericksburg region is currently in attainment with all of EPA's air quality standards, including ozone. So this process is not in place because of bad air quality. It's really in place because of this court decision that reinstated conformity requirements due to anti-backsliding concerns. So these reinstated requirements were made effective in February of 2019. EPA ended up issuing guidance for areas such as this region, in November of 2018 that outlined, what areas like this needed to do to meet conformity requirements, for areas that needed to meet conformity solely because of the South Coast 2 court decision. And what EPA, basically noted, which is important for this region, is because EPA revoked the standard that this region was formerly in maintenance with, and because we're in attainment with EPA's current ozone standards, EPA says that we no longer need to do a regional emissions analysis when we demonstrate conformity. And, for those of you not familiar, the regional emissions analysis was really the biggest piece of conformity where we would evaluate the total emissions associated with the region's tip and plan. And we would do that for a number of analysis years to make sure that the total emissions from transportation in the region fell below what we call motor vehicle emission budgets that were in the air quality plan for this region. But EPA said because the region, is operating under a standard that has been revoked, we no longer need to do that. So that is helping to streamline the conformity process moving forward. Next slide, please. So, some might wonder, if we don't have to do a regional emissions analysis, what do we need to do for conformity? The conformity rule still has a number of other requirements in it outside of the emissions analysis. And the most important one is consultation. There are, a number of interagency consultation requirements that need to be met, and that's why we're meeting here today. There's also requirements noting that the projects need to be in a conforming tip and plan, which is also why we're here today, to make sure that the 2050 LRTP and tip are going to be conforming once we go through this process, and the individual projects that move forward do need to be in the tip and plan. And the consultation procedures that we're operating under were adopted by FAMPO in August of 2004, where they actually specify ICG membership by agency, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. And, per the consultation procedures, the main two things we need to consult on this morning is the conformity schedule moving forward and the project lists that we're going to be including in the conformity assessment. And I know these project lists were approved by FAMPO on September 20th. And they were emailed out to everybody, so hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at those before today's meeting. Next slide, please. All right, this is the current list of the members in this interagency consultation group. And these are specified as per the FAMPO ICG procedures. It mostly consists of a lot of the technical folks on the technical committee of FAMPO. Any updates need to be made to this? Yes?
I think you can take Christine off for VRE and put Nick Ruiz. That's me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you like, are,
RUID. Yeah. She delegated that to me.
okay, great, thank you. Any others? Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is the geographic region that the Fredericksburg ozone non-attainment area and then maintenance area was composed of. It only consists of Stafford, Spotsylvania, and the city of Fredericksburg. It does not include King George or Caroline County. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the conformity schedule that we're going to be operating under. You know, as I noted, September 20th, FAMPO did approve the TIP and 2050 LRTP project lists. They also authorized FAMPO TAC to approve the draft conformity report for public review. That will be an agenda item in this morning's meeting during the FAMPO TAC meeting. Today we're having an interagency consultation group meeting, and subsequently TAC will be ideally approving that draft conformity assessment for public review. It will undergo public review starting in a couple days and running through November 5th. If there are any adverse comments on the draft conformity analysis, those will be addressed within the conformity assessment. And we plan on presenting the final conformity assessment with any comments addressed at the November 15th FAMPO meeting. And once we get FAMPO's approval, it will be submitted to FHWA, and FHWA will consult with FTA and work with EPA on the federal conformity finding. We normally allot around 45 days for that process to take place. And assuming that 45-day federal approval period is adhered to, we should be getting federal conformity finding right around the turn of the new year. Next slide. All right, then the next, and really the main thing to consult on is the project list. And again, this is the same project list that we emailed to everybody that FAMPO did approve September 20th. And one of the main items for conformity is whether or not projects are regionally significant, and that list does identify which projects in the list are regionally significant or not. And per the federal definition of regional significance, a regionally significant project is really a project that serves regional transportation needs that would normally be included in the region's travel demand model. And it would include a minimum of principal arterial highways and fixed guideway transit facilities. So as you go through the list, you will see the columns highlighting whether, you know, this region and the folks that have put the list together determine things to be regionally significant or not. I also know projects that are not regionally significant or are not typically modeled would not impact conformity or the conformity determination. So if you were aware of a project, you know, a small project on like a minor collector that is not regionally significant, adding it or deleting it to the list would not impact this conformity determination. So with that, are there any questions, comments? I guess just bring up. Again, this was emailed to everybody, and hopefully you've all had a chance to take a look at it. But are there any questions or comments on the project list at this time?
So Jim, I'll ask a different question, you know. Has the COVID solved all of our air quality problems?
COVID was last year, in 2020, due to obviously the decreased traffic. I will say the air quality readings were probably some of the best air quality readings we've ever had. Even places like, Northern Virginia and the DC region, which has historically been an ozone non-attainment area, even counting last year's data, even they're now showing attainment with ozone. So right now, every location in Virginia is meeting all of the national ambient air quality standards, EPA's air quality standards, and certainly, 2020 was a very good year. Obviously traffic has rebounded some, and this current year's 2021 readings, while they're still good and we're still meeting all of EPA standards, the readings are a little bit higher than they were in 2020, which definitely were certainly depressed due to the pandemic. So I certainly wouldn't say the pandemic has solved all our issues, but the good news is, there are no air quality issues, at least meeting federal air quality standards in this region, and we don't anticipate, any changes to that in the near future. Any other questions? All right. Next slide. All right, is there anyone here from the public that would wish to speak? Move on. All right, we will make one membership update that was noted. At this point, I would ask for a motion to approve the conformity schedule and the project list for the conformity determination that will be included in the conformity assessment.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Motion carries. Just last thing regarding next steps, again, at the upcoming FAMPO TAC meeting, we have already prepared the draft conformity assessment. Again, since there's no emissions modeling associated with it, we knowing the schedule and the project list, those are really the main items in the draft conformity assessment report that's in there, other than, dotting the i's and crossing the t's, making sure that we're following all the required interagency consultation procedures and the conformity. So that will ideally be approved in the upcoming meeting, and then it will undergo the 30-day public review. With that, I will adjourn the meeting and thank you all for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, but
Look at the people that we try. I mean, there's so many people that come through there
Come through that and
and
it has gone.
tell me that.
We're ready to go. Was he still in Richmond?
Yeah.
Okay. That's great. That's great news.
I'd like to call the Technical Advisory Committee to order. We'll start with the roll call and determination of the quorum with Stacy Fine.
From Stafford County, Alex Oziak.
Here.
Brendan Brown.
Here.
Brian Council. From King George County, Nick Minor. Kimberly Wilson. Caroline County, Mike Fincham. Craig Pennington. From Spotsylvania County, Paul Agnello.
Here.
Rodney White.
Here.
Jacob Pasquick. Leon Hughes. From Fred Transit, Aiden Quirk. Craig Reed. From the city of Fredericksburg, Jamie Jackson. Bassam Amin.
Here.
Mike Craig. From DRPT, Sierra Williams. Here. Todd Horsley. From VDOT, Michelle Shropshire. Stephen Haynes.
Here.
Jim Ponticello.
Here.
Dan Burnell.
Here.
From VRE, Christine Hoffner. Nick Ruiz.
here,
From Federal Highway, Ivan Rucker. From PRTC, Bob Schneider.
Here.
Joseph Stainsby.
Yeah.
From GW Ride Connect, Kate Gibson here. Lee Anderson. And FTA seats are still vacant, and we do have a quorum.
Thank you very much.
Just, Mr. Chair, if we could just take a second to congratulate Jamie Jackson on her wedding yesterday. That's probably the reason she was yesterday.
Good job.
It's great news. All right, so next item on the agenda is the approval of the October 4th Technical Advisory Committee agenda. Is there any discussion, or does anyone have any changes they'd like to discuss?
The motion for approval?
Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Number 4 is approval of the September 13th, 2021 TAC meeting minutes. Did anyone have any comments or changes with minutes?
Make a motion for approval?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Okay, so we're up to number 5, review of the September 20th, 2021 TAC committee meeting.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. There is the agenda from the policy committee in front of you. And as you know, I don't like to take very long doing this. It's just to remind everybody what happened if you weren't at the meeting. Paris from Baker gave an update on the Lafayette Boulevard traffic study. Smart Scale Round 5 presentation Matthew did, and he's going to give you a little bit of an update today. The Transportation Alternatives Program, the resolution 22.6 was approved to support those applications that have been submitted. The LRTP fiscally constrained project list, which we used to consider the analysis that was done in the previous meeting this morning, that was approved. We did get a letter from the TAC to say that they would like to see a new river crossing bridge included in the list. We presented that together with all the documents at the policy committee. The policy committee did respond to the letter saying thank you for the letter, and we'd like to continue the discussion, but we can't include an additional project at the last minute without specifications and details and agreement on on where to place a bridge or not to place a bridge, etc. So it was effectively deferred. They asked for the conversation to continue with CTAC. The LRTP fiscally constrained list was approved for conformity analysis, and the TAC was the resolution was approved for the TAC to approve the draft air quality conformity report, which we're dealing with today. And then the next two items were just to approve members for the CTAC, and those were both approved. And we just had a calendar update from Adam. So those are the basic items, and they're that's fine, but I don't relate to this point.
Any questions for Ian? All right, so continuing, the next item is public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? Did anyone sign in? So seeing none, we'll continue to number 7, action discussion items. First item is a 7A 2050 long-range transition plan update with Rich Denbo and Feng Lu. Are they on?
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Rich Denbo. I'm with Cambridge Systematics, and I'm here with my colleague Feng Lu. We are supporting FAMPO staff in working on the long-range transportation plan, primarily with modeling tasks and helping with the performance measures aspects of the plan and meeting those requirements. And FAMPO staff asked us to be here to present a brief update on what we're doing. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into that. Next slide, please. For the federal performance measures, we've developed a draft system performance report, which is a required element of MPO long-range transportation plans. So with MAP 21 and then the subsequent FAST bill, MPOs, state DOTs, and transit providers have to follow the performance measures and set targets and then monitor and report performance. So what we've done is develop a draft system performance report, which staff has looked at and reviewed. This will ultimately become part of the long-range transportation plan and is something that FHWA and FTA will look for and review as part of their review of the overall plan. So the system performance report essentially talks about the current performance and condition of the transportation systems for each of those federal measures and looks at the progress in meeting targets. And in this case, FAMPO opted to support the state targets for all of the federal targets. So the system performance report reports on the state data, what the data looks like in the FAMPO region, and then compares that with the statewide targets. This covers the performance areas that are required by the federal requirements. So the safety on all public roads, transit system safety as well, and then condition of bridges and pavement and transit assets and travel time reliability for passengers and for truck travel. So that pretty much covers the system performance report. As I mentioned, it's a draft. I'm going to turn it over to Feng to talk about some of the modeling that's been ongoing.
Thank you, Rich. This is Feng Liu from Cambridge Systematics. So I'm going to give you an update on what we have done since the January presentation. So what we did was a couple of things, including refining the land use and socioeconomic forecast. So as you, back in 2018, the policy committee approved that a jurisdictional control total on several socioeconomic variables, including households, population, employment, and so on. And since some comments in January about some forecast in some projects in local jurisdictions, so we incorporate those latest information jurisdictions in terms of several major projects in the region. And then those associated model input files for land use have been refined. based on the project information that was provided to us. Task we did was to prepare model networks, including reviewing the project information that was submitted by local jurisdictions in highway and so on. This is a joint effort between us and VDOT. I tried to put into the model of those projects to code them in the projects. And finally, we did some model runs to try to evaluate model results. Next, please. So just a reminder that the model covers the GWRC region as well as a small portion of Prince William County that is really just for model purpose. And the 2050 LRTP study area is FAMPO region, so that the new projects are only limited in the FAMPO region, not including any projects from King George and Caroline counties. So the forecast we are doing is based on the latest FAMPO model version 5, and that was updated recently by VDOT September. We have a base year 2017 and horizon year 2050. Next, please.
I actually had just a question just on the new projects. I know like the rural association plan for King George and Caroline was put, I think, last year. Were there no new projects being added to those counties?
Yes, I think Adam can elaborate on that. There's some new projects added.
Yeah, Paul, let's do the rural plan, those new projects that are in King George County are not as positive.
Okay. Is that because it be models or what was it?
We didn't have an ask for Cambridge on the rural side of capital. That's just something that we haven't done yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Also, there's this federal initiative that should be trying to split, and the FAMPO model should actually be modeling the rural counties and the counties. Going forward, we model the region to forward model.
Well, I guess I just say briefly with that, the reason why those counties were added is to help kind of better model the FAMPO region and like with a nice bridge. Some of the other kind of home corridors, 207 corridors.
I'm personally not opposed to it. I think that what happens in all federal perspectives too. So the bigger the model, the better. But there's some federal views that are slightly different.
Okay.
Next, please. So we updated the maps and to show the growth between 2017 and 2050. There's some changes in some TAZs in terms of population and employment. This is to show you the population for the base year 2017 on the left-hand side. You see the concentration around the city and also in Stafford County. On the right-hand side is the growth between 17 and 2050. A lot of growth along the I-95 corridor. That's the population growth at the TAZ level. So because of the TAZ vary by size, so you see some TAZ which are big, so they show up more prominently than others. This is to show the employment. Again, the growth is forecast to be mostly concentrated along I-95 corridor. That's also the concentration in base year 2017 as well. Next, please. So the land use data into the model and the chip productions by TAZs. So this is to show you the chip productions for commuting chips in 2017 and 2050. The concentration among the areas with a lot of population and households. On the right-hand side, you see 2050. You see a lot of growth in comparison with 2017. Again, they are along I-95 corridor, and also more dispersed into the counties, out suburban areas as well. Next, please. So the congestion, and as predicted and also estimated for the base year 2017 and 2050. For the base year, we have some localized congestion, pretty serious congestion. But in the 2050, we do see, the congestion is getting worse, especially the local roads that are arterials that connecting to I-95. So that's definitely due to the growth into the 2050. Next, please. In terms of the aggregate traffic growth between 2017 and 2050, we have this chart to show you at different levels. The GWRC region levels, we have pretty high population growth, followed by employment growth. The model domain also includes part of the Prince William County. So the growth is a little bit lower than the GWRC. So the chips and the VMT are a little bit lower than the growth. So that's what we have seen for 2050 and 2017. But it's really, considerable with traffic as from the model. So that's pretty much what I have today. Just giving you an update. That the next step, we will finalize the projections using the project information that was sent to us, and then provide you an update on what happened if those projects are implemented, and what the model would tell us about impacts on the traffic growth and travel patterns. Questions?
So I had just kind of a general question about kind of the next steps with the ORTG, kind of the schedule, like, and this is going to be more the template of staff. When will the project be done, and what are the next steps?
Yeah, we are working on finalize some of the transit projects right now. Highway side, we have gone through the review of the coding, and that's in pretty good shape. So we're expecting to finish transit coding in a couple of weeks. So within a month, we should be able to finish a estimate or forecast into 2050 with the projects in the model.
Well, as the left long said as well, Mr. Chair, so elements that they're working with pre-completion of the 2050 plan, it's the only process is nearing completion. There's a couple of tweaks that they're working to speed up as far as the transit project scaling model. There's also the conformity assessment, which is underway, of course, as of today. So review that should be in about by December 31st, give or take. Yes.
Yes.
And then there's also the updates to the narrative content of the plan, which we're working on right now. We should have that wrapped up by mid-December. We're looking to get approval to release the plan for public comment in January, and approve the plan in March. So that's sort of the working time frame. There's a little bit of a buffer.
And I guess like when the plan is available, like in a draft stage for review, like will technical committee see that for the public, or does everyone see that as a
We haven't determined that yet. We're open to either option there. We should have that again mid-December. Again, no committees between in early January for the TAC meeting, so that's something that we can discuss.
The approval for the policy, the approval for public comment comes from the policy committee, right?
Right, for the official public comment period.
Yeah, so the TAC should see the draft before the policy committee, and the policy committee would then officially send it up. So
Okay. And that would happen in January, but
So we're running these three processes simultaneously. The staff are busy updating the text of the document right now. Some chapters are we're ready to draft. Other chapters we're still tweaking. Tom is busy doing the modeling of the individual projects on the system at the same time, etc. So these things are all running simultaneously, so that hopefully they all come together by December in a completed format. A draft, honestly.
very good. Any questions on the ORTP for Cambridge consultants or campus staff? Very good, thank you very much.
Thanks.
So the next item on the agenda is 7B, approving the draft air quality conformity report for public comments. This is an action item, and this will turn over to Jim Panichello from VDOT and Hager.
Yeah, this morning we had an Interagency consultation group meeting. And the main purpose of that meeting, historically has been to prove the models, methods, assumptions that go into the conformity analysis. Due to the South Coast 2 court decision, we no longer need to do a regional emissions analysis. So, the conformity assessment has been completed already. The main items that, are in there is really the conformity schedule and the project list that has been approved by FAMPO. And it was also approved by the Interagency consultation group meeting this morning. So with this committee's approval, I think we're recommending that, FAMPO gave this committee authority to approve the draft report to go out to public review. So we are seeking this committee's approval. And I think public review is anticipated to start in a couple of days on October 6th. And it will undergo a 30-day public review period once approved by this committee. Any questions?
Thank you for all your good work on this this effort. I'll say I don't have any questions. If no one has any questions, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the Fall Commonwealth Transition Board meeting with the.
No, thanks, Mr. Chair. Perhaps I should just stand here. The point of this discussion is really just to come up with 2 or 3 projects that we think we would like to raise during the fall consultations. So we asked jurisdictions and state partners and so on to give us any ideas that they had to put on a list. I asked staff for any ideas to put on the list, and we made a draft list. Now, I think this is probably too long. We probably want a shorter list, but we're in your hands. That list was sent out in the packet, yes?
Yes.
So you've all seen this already, so I don't need to read through this list because I'll just be boring you with what you already know. But the idea is for us to just go through this list and say yes or no, you like this, you don't like this. I will then present also to the policy committee and get their input. And the idea really is to come up with, let's say, 3 items or whatever we feel strongly about that we should, as an organization, be raising at the fall CTB meetings and with the Secretary for Transportation. So we're trying to just be a little more organized, having thought through these items a little bit, so that when we get to the meetings, we have got options to present that, we've had a little bit of time to think about, so that we're not rushing it. I'll come back to the slide, but just go to the next slide. So the suggestion is that we request a meeting with the Secretary of Consultation to raise whatever the issues are. The policy committee members and myself speak at the full CDB meeting to raise whatever those issues are again. And then we send also those items in a letter to the Secretary of Consultation. Just go back to the thing. Finally, I've checked with VDOT last week, and we don't have a fixed date yet for those meetings. So we don't know when we need to be ready to make the presentation, and that's why I'm doing this, right? Is to make sure that by the time we get to, hey, the meeting is in 4 weeks' time, we've already thought about this, gone back and forth, discussed, come up with a list of items, and we're ready to go, so that when that happens, we can stand there with confidence and say, this is what FAMPO wishes to raise, and we know what those issues are. So there you have a draft list, and Mr. Chair, I'm open to you to tweak this list, change it, delete an item, add an item, whatever it is that you feel. But these are just items that came, emails from members and from staff. We just put it together in a list. So have at it. Whatever you think we should do, I'm all ears. Matthew, you will add a fact, Anna, can you just make a note of which ones we delete and which ones we add, so that after the meeting, we take that to the policy committee. You're capturing? Great. Okay, so Jordan will capture those. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So thank you, Ian, and we do definitely want to discuss this. I did have a basic question though, just for the state, basically with the fall transition meeting. Do you think that just the announcement for when those dates will come is coming soon?
No.
No.
It's up to the secretary.
Okay. And do we know, is it going to be an in-person meeting versus a virtual meeting?
I'm hearing that it could possibly be virtual.
Yeah.
Because the COVID numbers is steadily going up, so that's what I didn't hear.
Okay.
But so that can help you.
Yeah, we will certainly, as the chair, keep in touch with VDOT regularly, and as soon as we do here, we will email TAC members so that they are aware when the dates are.
So Ian and the staff, thank you for pulling together this list. I'll give a couple, I guess, initial comments. It seems like, smart scale would be one of the bullet points, maybe to make some points about. And I know the two kind of points underneath smart scale at the top there are ones that FAMPO has made for a number of years. I think they're still valid. Another issue I guess I would throw out, I guess it'd be interesting to see what kind of other TAC members think of this. I don't think that FAMPO or GWC or the FAMPO jurisdictions have enough application slots for smart scale. I think that that's something we could comment on. I don't think the number of application slots comes close to basically meeting with whatever transition needs are. Had the worst kind of congestion on 95 in the state and in the country a couple of years ago. There's just a lot of needs in this area, and basically we always have a very good list for the projects. We have to go through kind of a difficult process of whittling that down. Get down to just 4 for FAMPO, 4 for GWC, and then after the city and Subcommittee have the same issue with their local lists. I know that some jurisdictions that are a little bigger have 10, but which is quite a kind of jump. So maybe if we had 5 or 6 each, that would kind of be a better situation than we currently have. I'll say with the I-95 widening between exit 130 and 126, that's something that Subcommittee strongly supports. We also support the Vcr trail, so I think that's a good point. I do want to ask about number 4, just from what was the intent of that? Because I know that there have been a lot of VDOT studies of Route 1 recently, and I guess there might still be some stretches that have not been studied. But what was the intent?
I'll speak to that one. The idea there is clearly that we need an alternative to the I-95. If you know, last week, that truck that went vertical on I-95 and not 1 or 2 lanes shut down, everything shut down. And the alternatives are limited. And even if FAMPO or GWRC or whoever gets funding and builds another bridge over the I-95, that only solves the problem between Spotsylvania and Stafford. It doesn't solve the problem of all the traffic going north. Almost every day, the I-95 near Woodbridge is red, is slowed down, is stuck. And so the idea is to look at what can be done to develop the develop Route 1 as a slightly higher mobility road to take off some of the traffic next time the I-95 blocks, which will be sometime this week, I would imagine. It seems to be a weekly occurrence now. So that's the idea, to try and find some alternative for every time there's a crash and the I-95 closes totally. It then, did any of you look at the congestion map of our jurisdictions when the I-95 closed last week? Because it's not just every side road, you know, whether it's Matt looked at the map at the time, and every road that is vaguely got more than one lane either way in the FAMPO jurisdiction is bright red, is blocked, is congested. It took one of our staff 45 minutes to get from Central Park to an area in the Union Station, and the trip normally takes 7, 8, 9 minutes. It's now a 45, 46-minute trip. It's not just the I-95 that gets affected when that's blocked. When the traffic can't move north, it bleeds into all the side roads and locks down the whole of the FAMPO jurisdiction. The idea here is that we would try to speed up the traffic on Route 1 using whatever technology. It's less expensive to move traffic faster on an existing road than it is to go and build a whole new road or add lanes on an existing road in a long direction. It's cheaper. It's cheaper if you can use technology and other things to move traffic faster.
Excuse me. Will VDOT has say on controlling the traffic on Route 1, maybe by adjusting the timing, the green time, or something like that on Route 1 or something? Would that help?
VDOT could answer whether they control that. They're in the room.
I would think that the study that you're proposing would look at that specifically, but I know that we already have the capability of doing that. Now, whether it's done with the cities, you know, cooperation and the various counties, then you have, it's always an ongoing discussion. Now, will a study help with that? Possibly. We could look at a few more things. You know, the studies that we have currently underway and that we've had on Route 1, which are numerous, have looked at, you know, specific choke points, safety needs, and so on and so forth, trying to come up with some recommendations that we could apply for funding in the future and get some improvements done. So it is a different approach. What you're looking at here is kind of like, you know, is there anything we can do immediately? Well, the 95 study identified some of those types of things. We may get some additional ability to redirect traffic, say up 301, you know, further south, you know, at the 104 or something. But yeah, this is, I can see it's a totally different approach to incident management versus, you know, daily traffic.
So that sounds like a worthy thing to do. One comment I make, I think like if this list ends up being more than 3 main points, that's okay. Also that the second point, I kind of glossed over this. The second point I think is very valid with smart scale, and that can be combined with the other smart scale items. And then I guess the very last one, the one basically with the commuter trains on weekends, I guess maybe that's a VRE question, but or maybe VRTC question. But I know basically with the transforming rail kind of effort that the state has with, you know, VRE, when that's completed, will that give the capability to basically have weekend trains?
I can answer that. Yeah, so after the phase 2 of the Transforming Rail in Virginia, which right now scheduled for 2030. That will enable, that there'll be sufficient capacity to enable reverse flow and weekend trains. But it's my understanding that the VRE Operations Board is looking at ways to try to provide some weekend service, some limited weekend service sooner than that, before some of the phase 1 and phase 2 improvements are made. But I couldn't say exactly, you know, because it's a matter of consulting with the participating jurisdictions, you know, for the area.
I think,
Yeah.
I think
Certainly by 2030, that's the plan from the state level or state perspective.
I attended the board meeting, the last one. Bob was also there. I can't recall who else in the room was there, but there's sort of just tentative initial discussion is, I would say, where we are now. Yeah, at the board, Bob and Mike. It's very early stage kind of tentative discussions at this stage. Right? Yeah.
I mean, as it's been described to me, it's not a matter of equipment or crew. You know, we have the trains, they sit in the yard, you know, on the weekends. It's just a matter of the capacity and the agreements with CSX. And
One of the interesting things in the conversation kind of came out of the issue of low ridership and the need to expose more people to VRE. Well, the majority of traffic on weekends is not us. We in the room are not sitting on 995. Well, you. He went to lunch in Richmond. But the vast majority of people coming through are not in the VRE footprint. So there's kind of there was a mobility disconnect in the conversation, but it opens up that there is some weekend need for services. And the pandemic has identified some different ways that commuter-based services need to reflect that. DC remains a destination city, but it's a long distance destination city, meaning people are tourism and vacationing, whereas other major cities like New York City, Boston, Philadelphia, they are hub cities for their own immediate population. DC is not the major attractor. The irony is, if you think about it, Annapolis, Alexandria, Fredericksburg, all the surrounding communities draw people outside of from the district out, not the other way in. So there's kind of a bit of a disconnect, but that'll be worked out.
So I guess, Mr. Chair, my question would be, are there any items on this list we should remove? And then the second would be, are there any items, I mean, we did give people an opportunity to submit items and those are all captured here, but are there any items that we should have? So anything we should delete and anything we should add? And then, Mr. Chair, my intention would be with the agreement of the TAC is to take whatever the final list is of this that we agree on to the policy committee and see whether they have any things to delete or add. And, you know, we'll build this so that by the time the lead calls and says in 4 weeks' time in the meeting, we then have that list. So are there any items to delete? Anybody feels we should take one off, or any items we should add?
So I didn't have any items to delete. I did throw out the smart scale item basically to request kind of additional applications.
Yes.
For Geography and the localities.
Anybody have any comment on that one? Because John's capturing it and we will add it unless people feel otherwise.
No, I agree with that. I mean, I think if we were going to trim anything off the list, maybe we're removing the weekend train routes. I mean, just seeing how the commuters are hardly using the trains as is, and as Bob alluded to, you're not really seeing a whole lot of draw for weekend traffic with the DC to use the trains.
Well, I think it's worth, absolutely must be looked at, because it's one of those things that until you look at it, you really don't know. So it's until you look at what are the traffic counts, what's the streetlight data tell us, what are the volumes, what are the times, all of those kinds of things. If 90% of the traffic is through traffic, then there's that part of it. But if you do have a significant portion that is localized, well, can you maybe match that? It may not be an all-day type service, but it might be a pair, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. So there's some merit to looking at it, but just in terms of, hey, let's throw a ton of robust weekend service out there. That may not always be, you know, viable, especially when you're looking at economics of things. One of the other big challenges when you talk about mobility on weekends, weekend mobility tends not to be SOVs, it tends to be HOVs, because there's typically people doing something together. So things like hub lanes are really popular because it actually siphons the traffic really well. You get nice throughput when you have access to bi-directional traffic because now you have 6 lanes open instead of just 3, things like that. But what you have is you have fare penalties. So what that means is it's why we drive to Orlando with our families of 4 as opposed to fly. But if you're going by yourself, you'll fly because the cost of driving is offset by the cost of airfare. So when you multiply a family of 4 or 5 traveling in a vehicle, now the fare to get from Fredericksburg to DC for 2 people, let's do a family of 4, what's about $8 one way?
Yeah.
So now it's a $64 one-way trip for 2 round trip for a family of 4 on VRE. For $64, that's my fuel, valet, parking, and lunch. So that's the economic decision-making that families tend to make. Then they look at, well, time, I'll just leave a little earlier, get home a little later. If you're local, that time suck isn't as painful. So that's why we really look at a lot of these things in behaviorism, getting away from just traffic volume. People are willing to sit in traffic for 2 hours every single day to go to work. We know that. They've been doing it here for 20 years. So
is that lunch for 4 people for $64?
Well, it's a cheapie. It's a taco.
I was just wondering what that was.
Yeah, you go to Richmond for lunch. Some of us just go to the taco.
And I will say too that, we do have some level of weekend trains today. It's our Interac, state-supported Interac service, which runs, 7 days a week in both directions. And so I think the Passenger Rail Authority in consultation with the RPT's rail planning team are going to be looking at their policy, basically their policies through the statewide rail plan update that they're conducting right now. And so, because it's one of the most common, like when I was at the RPT, I remember being public comment, the trains are too expensive. I would go up for that reason. I would go up to DC for the day, but a family of 4, it's going to be $150. I'll just drive.
Right. And WMATA's just gone to $2 on weekends, it's $2 per entry. So now you're talking about, okay, there's only 2 stations in all of the VRE footprint right now, LaFont. I mean, you can get up at Alexandria, but if you're talking DC proper, there's only LaFont and Union Station. Well, how are you going to move from LaFont and Union Station? You're going to enter Metro. So now you're increasing so now it's that cost per versus single seat ride. So if you want to go to Georgetown, think about now your total travel time, your cost of entry, getting into the system, getting to park, or just go park. And that's part of that behavioral decision-making that that's what the study would need to take a look at beyond just, ooh, there's rough traffic. We have to look at all of it.
So what I'm hearing, Mr. Chair, is that we should add the item here, which you suggested, that seems that there's support for that we should request additional slots. I don't hear anybody saying no. And this item, do we want to modify it or remove it? Or leave it? The rail one.
I'd leave it, absolutely. You have to look at these kinds of things.
Okay, you happy with the wording? You want to change the wording to a study or something? Or are you happy with it like it is?
So leave it as is. Don't ham it in.
Okay, any other views on that?
I would say recommend to do a study rather than just going ahead and supporting weekend trains. If we don't have a study that shows we need these kinds of things, why support it? I think we ought to do a study, as Bob alludes to first.
Nick, has anybody done a study on this?
So through the statewide rail plan update, there's a service planning component to that, and they're going to be relooking at the transforming rail and convenience service concept that was negotiated back last year, and then also looking out into the 2040 plus time horizon. So I don't know if that study, I'm removed from that now, but I don't know if somebody's going to look at, it's going to get into the granularity of, let's look at fares, let's look at, I hope it does. And maybe that's something we can recommend, recommend that the CTV direct DRPT to address these particular issues in the statewide rail plan, because we've already got consultants for that, they're already on the way, so maybe put a finer point on it.
So instead of support or whatever, you want to direct DRPT to investigate this and the fares.
Would that be a DRPT or a VCR?
So it actually would be a DRPT, it'd be under Emily's group, because they're still in charge of statewide rail planning, whereas VCR is like more specific station, project level planning.
Nick, could you just say that wording again so that Jordan can capture it so we can make the modification?
I think it said, request CTV to, direct the DRPT to address or to study.
To investigate.
Or to investigate
all of this plus pairs
Yeah, in the existing statewide rail plan,
in the existing statewide rail plan, which is currently being redrafted.
redraft. It's a 4-year requirement for the Federal Railroad Administration.
So showing your hands, does that capture what people feel is a good list?
Yes, I think it makes sense, and I support kind of that modification just to the item concerning the rail.
And we'll then ask the policy committee also for their input, so we also want to make some tweaks and changes and, you know. Okay, so I think Mr. Chairman and I won't belabor this point. We'll also take it to the policy committee, also get their inputs and capture those before we go any further.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Ian. All right. So the next item on the agenda is a 7D, a Smart Scale Round 5 update. And I knew there was a handout on this one, so Betsy, if you don't have the handout, you may want to pick it up.
Yeah, there was a handout for the presentation. It was not in the packet. It is outside if anybody wants to pick it up. This is going to be a pretty simple presentation. Nothing really more than anybody already knows. Just kind of reiterating a few points and kind of going through what the next steps are. So I'll let a couple people come back in the room. And then, so to start, this is our timeline, of course, the same timeline everyone's seen. Of course, the beginning presentation, we are in October, so October 2021, so continue to be that assistance and draft project list discussion. Of course, October 15th, we have our intake form too. So going into that, we're asked to do a little bit of discussion on the scoring process, so how the projects were scored. So I'm going to quickly reiterate how that was done. So to develop our list, we prioritized the projects identified potential member jurisdictions based on current recent FAMPO lead-out pipeline start studies and other projects, how that their previous smart scale rounds is applicable, forward priorities such as identified projects, and then really mostly the recently adopted LRTP project prioritization methodology. Basically looking at the quantitative aspects, there's no subjectivity to it, and the location-based measures. So projects are categorized by mode. For this, we have 2 modes, roadway and active transportation. And then project types contain the same topics of valuation measures. Specific measures and weighting vary. Projects receive a neutral score for all qualitative measures, so the ones with a subjectivity to it. And then project cost is unknown at this stage, was not factored into the process. Because really it is unknown, we don't have a specific number yet. So the scoring process, quickly go through this. It's based on evaluation measures initially taken from Smart Scale and then kind of reworded or weighted. So the Smart Scale evaluation measures are worth 60%, safety 12%, congestion 9%, accessibility 15%, environmental quality 6%, economic development 12%, land use coordination 6%, statewide coordination 10%, and project benefit 30%. And then same type of measures for active transportation, however, different percentages. So for safety, 25%, congestion mitigation, 5%, accessibility, 15%, environmental quality, 5%, economic development, 5%, land use coordination, 5%. So this is how the project is scored based on these measures, and these measures and their descriptive features, how they're actually scored, are identified in our LITP project prioritization methodology, which is linked on this slide here in the packet. However, it can also be found on our website if anyone wants to go look through that as well. And we're happy to answer any questions about the specifics of projects and how they were scored. Just wanted to provide a brief overview as to how they were and the process that was done.
Yeah, Matthew, can you remind us all, like, on a list of just for the scoring process kind of spreadsheet, there's a statewide coordination is 10% and the project benefit is 30%. Like, how are those calculated?
Yeah, so statewide coordination is calculated based on the VTrans needs. So it is calculated by basically the district and statewide needs based on their priority, as well as how much or whether it is on a VTrans need. So it's based on those 3. They're each weighted 50% for if it has a VTrans need, and then I believe 25 and 25 for the priorities for statewide and district-wide needs. And then project benefit is one of the ones where there's subjectivity to it, and it's done by FAMPO staff. So these are all given a neutral score of 5 out of 10.
In other words, what it's telling you in lots of detail is that we use the new LRTP prioritization methodology, excluding the qualitative assessments. So anything with an interpretation required has been removed, those measures, and we focused on the quantitative analysis from the current latest LRTP. And you'll remember the LRTP scoring methodology we based on the categories from Smart Scale so that we could try to replicate it. So that when we did Smart Scale applications, they would score well because they're replicating the categories for Smart Scale. And you'll remember some meetings ago when we were working on that methodology, we did an approximate comparison between how projects did score in the last round of Smart Scale and how they would have scored if we used our new methodology. And you'll remember there was a very close comparison between those two alternatives. And so it's ideally suited as a methodology to use for Smart Scale, and there are none of the subjective qualitative metrics are used in this case. They're removed or they're given a neutral score. So every single one gets 5 out of 10. So that's all whatever the number is, so that it doesn't affect the score. With no style interpretation required, it's just a numbers game.
Just clarification here. Under the Smart Scale, you have like 6 items you can score on. And then you go down to project bank, you have 30% there. That comes from land use condition or coordination or economic development? Isn't that the same thing?
So I can quickly go through just a little bit. So for instance, the land use is just looking at the jobs and population within a area, so a 1 mile buffer around projects for 2017 and 2050 jobs and population. And then the project benefit specifically is looking at basically was the project recommended in a formal study, staff judgment on the extent to which the project achieves its intended outcome, factoring in study data analysis, as well as other factors such as the provide a regional benefit, does it address LRTP goals. So that's more of a staff perspective for the 30% on how this project will affect our regional goals, LRTP goals, some of the more specifics of the project. So.
But just remember, those are the qualitative ones,
yes,
which are largely cancelled. So that 30% is not used in this. So Matthew, this is unfortunate that we're seeing those items here because we're actually not using them.
Well, they are part of the scoring. So it's given a neutral benefit. So it's 30%. So it's still instead of a 3 out of 10, it's a 1.5 or something, so to say. So it's still part of the scoring measures, because deleting that would then have to go through and redo all the score weighting and everything. So it's still part of it. It's just given a neutral score, so it does not affect the project outcome.
So I guess I have a question just on the Smart Scale evaluation measures, the 60%.
Yep.
I know that those are the metrics that Smart Scale uses, but the relative weighting of them seems to be a little different than Smart Scale.
Yeah.
Like for instance, the accessibility is 15% of the 60, so that'd be like 25%, and Smart Scale it's not that high. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, so when we were creating this staff, we worked together to figure out kind of what the best weighting for these metrics would be. This is kind of from a staff perspective what we had looked at. Adam, do you want to add something?
Yeah, well, those do line up in category B for Smart Scale. So those are totals, not of the 60%. So the 12, 9, 15, 6, 12, 6 add up to that 60, and that does reflect the same weighting in category B, C.
So it was changed briefly for the after transportation, for instance,
right,
to account for some differences in the project types.
So for the roadway count, it's a 1-to-1, same proportion on after transportation. We wanted to place a heavier focus on safety, so it doesn't line up exactly right.
And I guess my thought on maybe what would be helpful, I know this was done for the CMAC and the SPG, but you actually have scoring kind of spreadsheets in Excel and make this available to TAC membership.
Yeah, and I think there'll probably be, a stage later on as well where we'll go through and when we have all the finalized projects, go through and restore them as well. To see kind of what the finalized, once you edit out small things or add small things. So, yeah. Right. Any other questions on the scoring process, how it's done?
I guess I have just one more question about that. So I know we're not including it just yet, but is project cost and percentage of local share going to be included as part of the overall scoring once we kind of get closer to finalizing the projects and determine those costs?
At the staff level, that's not a discussion we've had at this point. We will in the future, but it's certainly something we could add if the tax wishes to. All right, so on to kind of our list, just a reiteration of the list, the Geography and FAMPO list that we are submitting for our intake form by October 15th. So I'm going to quickly go through the projects and what they are at this stage. So first we have Lay Hill, US 1 Lay Hill intersection improvements. This is basically based off the previous smart scale project, intersection and access management improvements with pedestrian improvements as well. Center Parkway Route 1 improvements, pipeline study. Warrenton Road US 17 bike ped improvements, a sidewalk from the US 17 STAR study. Route 2 improvements based on part from the Lafayette Boulevard study, looking at Vcr access road and a roundabout at Dixon Street and Route 3, as well as further discussions, widening of Dixon Street between Beulah-Salisbury Drive and Mayfield Avenue, and bicycle and pedestrian improvements, Mayfield Connector Path and Dixon Park. Lafayette Boulevard roadway and bike ped improvements from the Lafayette Boulevard study, several roadway improvements, and then bike ped, so Twin Lakes Drive R-Cut, and the Braehead Drive U-turn, Greenwich Drive right turn lane, Falcon Drive right turn, right in, right out, sidewalk along the east side, and shared use path along portions of the west side. Vcr Regional Project, this is a combined project, as both the city of Fredericksburg and Spotsylvania County had a VCR project on their list. So we combine them in the city. This may look at the Riverfront Connector, Lafayette Boulevard Connector, VCR Bridge over US 1, and then also a VCR Trail Tunnel at I-95, as well as a VCR Trail extension in Spotsylvania County to Harrison Road.
Just one question with that. Is there anything being proposed at Route 3 in the VCR Trail?
I sent an email last week. I'm waiting to hear back, but we'll make sure to follow up for the October 15th deadline on this.
Thank you.
I-95 widening to 8 lanes, similar to previous smart scale applications, with the inclusion of the widening, the rebuilding the bridge at Harrison Road, and then the VCR Trail Tunnel at Hazelton. Pipeline study, Route 3 Gordon Road to I-95 west ramps, addressing needs along Route 3. Pipeline study, Lassen Lane to Idlewild Boulevard, addressing needs on Route 1. And the Metropolitan corridor study, several improvements along the corridor, at Commonwealth Drive / Jackson Village Parkway and shared use path, Massaponax Road and shared use path, Guinea Station Road and shared use path between Massaponax Road, Guinea Station Road and Massaponax High School, and then Route 606 and shared use path.
And then Matthew, just on that very last kind of improvement that's come that, there was a kind of a minor update basically with the southbound U-turn. Can you have that?
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay, great.
And then, so next steps. Reminder emails for the intake forms have been sent, or the intake form emails have been sent as a reminder. They were sent all last week and the week before to localities for your projects. Stafford, thank you for getting back to me on Thursday and Friday with those projects and the intake forms. The city and Spotsylvania, if you guys can get back to me as soon as possible with the intake forms, so we can finalize those and submit them next week for the deadline. And please let me know if there's any questions on any of the projects, any changes that need to be made, really any items related to those. And I know we still need to talk a little bit about the Vcr Regional Project as well.
So Mr. Chair, the point of this presentation was to really remind the jurisdictions that we've sent the emails with your specific project maps and details, and we're asking you to check those as jurisdictions and to then let us know that you're happy with the map and all that, or the pre-submission so that we can go ahead and do those. So we're just asking for jurisdictions, reminding them again with this presentation, please look at your email, go through your projects, check them, send us back any, if you see that there's a minor issue that we haven't captured quite correctly, then let us know. But remember, it's the pre-application. So we just need to get it roughly correct so that VDOT can be requested to do their initial round of technical work on those applications.
And kind of today, our TAC meeting, our goal is to, if there are any questions that still need to be answered on these intake forms, locality, FAMPO, distribution, whatever, we see if we can answer any of those today, of course, with VDOT here, as well as also looking at, VDOT has requested information on economic development sites, so the land use part of the applications. If you have that information, awesome. Get it to us for our applications by the October 15th deadline, so we can send it off to VDOT as well. And intake forms will be submitted no later than October 15th.
Yeah, I'll just quickly say for spots meeting, we're getting close on the land use. I think we'll have that in the next couple days. And then with the intake forms, we did look at them. We have to kind of relook at them, but our goal is to try to get that all done by Wednesday. We may have some of it done before, so they kind of come in a few different waves.
Yeah, and I saw your email on Friday. So.
Yeah.
But Simon, if you could just remind the city, because like not everybody from the city is here, so with in the here, just a reminder to send us any changes or problems that you have on any. Oh, there you are. Sorry, I can't see the masks on who all is where. I beg your pardon.
Yeah, no, not you.
Ignore. But by starting out, if you could just remind the city to just give us feedback on that.
So I did have a question just on the overall schedule, just going back to like slide 2, just with the desire that we have approval of the project list in November. Now is the intent of that's the approval of the pre-applications?
I think, Paul, at this point, I know that we established this schedule with the, we put this out in May, before we knew about the intake form process, which is taking place now, of course, in October. So unless VDOT disagrees, I'm actually not going to suggest we take any action for approval in November, since it seems like that's not a necessary step at this point.
Is that okay, Stephen? Or Susan?
I apologize. Well, could you say?
So November, this, if you look at the screen, we approved this plan in May. November says approval of project list, but that's not really going to be the timeline any longer for approving a project list. Am I correct?
Right. That just needs to be. That's kind of a placeholder. That's so that that's that needs to be done. But because we added the intake form in October, basically, we've changed our schedule as we've gone along because we came up with this new method. So
we can remove November.
Yes, from that point on, yeah, it's it can be whenever before the pre-application submission.
So
Something.
we could update the schedule to take us at the November TAC meeting from November through the full application phase. We'll have that updated for the next TAC meeting.
Sure, that would be great. And I guess I'll just ask with the pipeline studies, the goal is that those will still all be done by the end of this calendar year?
I wouldn't say done. I would say hopefully we will have recommendations from which potential applicants can choose. There will be further development. Now, the good thing about the pipeline studies is a lot of the schedule pre-engineering and estimation will take place with the studies themselves. So we'll be simultaneously working through the pipeline studies that will be working on any of the other applications that you put in through VDOT for assistance. So, but yeah, I wouldn't expect all the pipeline studies to be completed prior to the pre-application deadline. The actual publishing of those could run beyond, and obviously they have to be done before the full application deadline so they can become a part of the application.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any other questions for VDOT or FAMPO staff on Smart Scale? Okay, so hearing none, next item on the agenda is number 8, the CMAC FTG Subcommittee meeting materials. I guess who's presenting on this?
So, Mr. Chair, if you recall, we're not doing a presentation on this item. This item is to give you the materials in advance, long before we get to the subcommittee, which you all have decided to bring it to the end. So we put this on there just to remind you that the subcommittee is coming. We've sent out a document for you all to read and review, so that by the time you get to the subcommittee, you've already seen the outline, and then you can give us instruction in the subcommittee as a start as to the particular items you want in or out or change or whatever the case is. So we're expecting a full discussion in the subcommittee, and today we're just noting, reminding you all the subcommittee is coming. We've given you the draft document, so you have plenty of time to read through it, digest it, think about things you want to raise and change and bring up at the subcommittee. And then really the full, what we didn't want to do is rehash the content twice. So redo it in this meeting and then redo it in the subcommittee meeting. We're just alerting you to the upcoming meeting, send out that material, and in the meeting, we'll be there to, as a staff, to fully discuss, receive all the comments, changes, requests, etc. in that meeting, and then develop a document based on that.
Thank you very much, Ian. So I don't want to dive into the details today, but one kind of big picture item is, I thought we had sort of agreement or consensus that there'd be kind of a separate CMAC and a separate SCBG methodology, and like this has them both combined. So
Yeah, we're happy to separate them out. Paul can talk about that in detail at the subcommittee meeting. This one in particular, we had sort of a working draft when we didn't want to take the time to separate them out completely yet. We haven't taken action on that or anything like that yet, but this does have a breakdown by funding program at the top. So they run concurrently, the process will be concurrent, but there are separate sections. And again, this is just a break, so this is just sort of the outline of how that could look. You'll see that in red throughout this document as well, there's places where we've identified discussion points for that first subcommittee meeting. And I'll add to that, the document framework or outline, if you will, goes until about page 12 or 13. And then we've gotten all the comments that we received by the 27th in this PDF as well. So we can take a look at each other's comments, and then we received comments from each member of jurisdiction as well as BRE. Those are in this document, so we're going to read before that subcommittee.
But yes, the intention is to have a separate scoring system for CMAC and a separate for SPDG. But obviously they're going to run concurrently in the same time period because they have to be done at the same time, basically. Well,
thank you.
Yes, so please do pay attention to the date and time and venue of the meetings of the subcommittee. We do want to have a successful subcommittee and everybody giving their input and participation.
And can you please remind us, like, when is the subcommittee meeting?
It's October 14th at 10:30 a.m. and it's virtual. So do not come here to the office. That is a virtual meeting. There's no quorum requirement.
10:30, you said?
10:30. And the folks that are on that subcommittee have determined that the last TAC meeting should have a meeting invite. If you are on that and don't have one, let me know. I'll send a calendar invitation to you.
So it should be in your calendar.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions for the FAMPO staff and CMAC and MCBG? Hearing none, next item is number 9, correspondence.
Stacey, do you have any correspondence?
No. Yeah, I can talk about this real quick. This is just a signed resolution from the September 20th policy committee meeting that authorizes the TAC to take action on the draft conformity report. So of course, in this meeting, just wanted to include this in the package for everyone's awareness.
So there's no other correspondence for the text specifically that I'm aware of.
Any questions for Ian or the FAMPO staff? Hearing none, we'll go to staff reports.
Just a couple of items here, Mr. Chair. The first one is what we've just done, reminded you about the subcommittee meeting. Secondly, we have a new intern that has just started with us, so if you can wave, that's Lana. Lana is studying at the university very close to us and has joined us as a part-time intern on campus staff, so very welcome to Lana. She'll be working on some of the projects that we're working on at present. Also, just some good news, we have got the signed contracts with our 3 consultants already signed. They've signed, we've signed, the document has been executed, so FAMPO now has live on-call contracts with Michael Baker, PhD, and Cambridge Systematics for the next 3 years, renewable for a further 2 years. So for 5 years, we now have at least 3 live contracts, and we're really relieved about that. It took about 5 months to get all the bells and whistles, but it's finally done and executed. So just notifying you that we've taken care of that particular thing that we needed to do as well. Also, it's the Apo Conference starting today in Arizona, and 3 of our FAMPO staff will be making presentations at the conference. So we will be in Arizona this week. So if we're a little slow on responding to your emails this week, you will forgive us. We'll be back on Friday night, and we will continue to monitor emails. The rest of the staff will be on site here. Just also a reminder of the date and time for the next stakeholder group of the East-West study that is coming up as well. I've just forgotten the date.
2 o'clock on the 12th.
2 o'clock on the 12th in this very venue. So if you are one of the members of that stakeholder group, just a reminder, on the 12th, we'll be back for our second stakeholder group meeting. Mr. Chair, those are all the stuff.
Thank you very much, Ian. So next we'll go to member reports. I guess we'll start to my left with Sim. Okay.
All right, for Stafford, we have completed our TAC applications. The board decided not to pursue funding for the Belmont Ferry Farm Trail project. So our 2 projects are Salisbury Drive sidewalk and the Forestwood Drive sidewalk. And then we're still working with VDOT to try to wrap up estimates on our 2 revenue sharing applications. Hope to get those submitted by the end of the week. That's all I have.
Yeah, just a couple of things. We had some wonderful, exciting news. Probably most of you are aware of it, that this Saturday, there'll be a ribbon cutting ceremony for Chatham Bridge reopening. You'll be able to bike across the bridge. So if you get an opportunity to come out, it's at 10 a.m. is the ribbon cutting, and I think between 11 and 2, you'll be able to walk the bridge and enjoy the view without having to worry about being run over by a car. But fortunately, we have a 10-foot trail there approximately now that you'll be able to continue to do this the following day when it opens to traffic, which will be Sunday. So I'm glad you guys will be back from Arizona and can enjoy this. Yes, and then the other big announcement is that we're going to be mid next week, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that we're going to see some major changes out on our southbound river crossing project as well. So some of our issues that you described will hopefully show some improvement even during incidents. Hopefully, we got new ways across the river. Capacity.
Right. I believe the city is also opening the park on the same day as the
bridge
opening. So it'll be it's going to be a very full day.
All right, King George.
Not a lot to report. Revenue sharing application went in last week. And we are getting ready to send in our 5 pre-apps for smart scaling. 15. That's it.
Great, very good. Here to see an Interac.
Yes, last week we had the Virginia Transit Association meeting in which we won the statewide exceptional safety award. So proud of the staff for that. A year ago, about this time, we received the Gold Standard Award for the Transportation Security Administration for work. We're the only bus-only system in the DMV to receive that. A lot of hard work went into it, so it's a staff effort and we're appreciative. Beyond that, our services returned to a more increased level. We've all seen the presentations that truck traffic is up over what it was pre-pandemic. Road volumes are up at or higher than, depending on time of day, pre-pandemic. And so some of the trips we've added in, starting on September 27th, are designed to extend the peaks. And that is one of the trends that we're starting to see. We're seeing increased demand for later trips, as well as earlier trips out of the district. And if you're looking at new traffic modeling, you're seeing that is almost red all the time. There's some sections of red, 166 and 95, in red at all times, whereas pre-pandemic, that was often not the case. Once you cleared about this time of the morning, things were green for quite a while. The volume of traffic has just shifted from the overload in the morning to now a full-time overload. It's just, instead of being dark, deep red, it's just a lighter shade of red. So we'll continue to watch that, and we're also examining our ridership patterns. With the pandemic, obviously ridership dropped. We're back about 35%. We increased up until the Delta variant, but because we do maintain a relatively lower volume of services than we did before, our productivity of service is about 50%. And we were talking earlier, what is productivity? It's basically the number of seats you have available for service delivery, and then how many of those seats get filled. That's your productivity. So even though ridership's at 35%, we're offering a lower volume of service. So when that line gets redrawn, it's adjusting the volume. So it's pouring half the liquid of a 20-ounce cup into a 16-ounce cup. You now have a fuller cup. And it's also helping us extend our dollars a little further and really help with some of the employment issues. One thing that everyone heard if you attended the conference, hiring is a critical issue in the transit industry, as it is in many, but that's something that all transit operators are facing.
Yeah, I was really remiss. I should have congratulated Omnirail on that award, which they received at the VCR Conference, and also one of the staff of the Fred Transit Service also received an award at the VCR Conference. So congratulations to both of them.
That's great. Great job. So it's a spots meeting. We'll go next. I'll say that we have our second public meeting for bond referendum. It's coming up on October the 21st at 6:30 p.m. at the Marshall Center. So the bond referendum is not just transportation, it includes kind of three other areas. But it's the transportation component, 101.7 million. So that we submitted 3 TAP applications by the deadline this past week. We're working on one revenue sharing application for the Geographic Region extension that we're planning to submit this week. Rodney, is there anything I missed? Good. So that's it for us. Theory?
I don't have anything for the good of the group.
Okay. I'll say future reference, you're welcome to the table.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And here, you did receive?
I'm happy to report that we have a new staff member who actually just started today. So we're really excited. She's going to mostly be focusing on our van pool programs. And I will say that we hired marketing consultants and we're starting to work on a marketing plan as we continue to recover from the pandemic and people go back to ride sharing, transit, all of these things. We're still working with the RCT to launch a ride sharing app. So we're closer to launching that, but we're starting to kind of build our marketing program for launch once it's ready to go live. So stay tuned.
Great. Is there anyone who wishes to give an update that I've missed? Okay. So hearing no other comments, and then our next meeting is on November 3rd. That's a different day, though. It's a Wednesday. So please note the next staff meeting is on Wednesday, November 3rd. I'll make a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.